v.h.s.x? What do you mean?
Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today I wanted to get into a JCGlitchmaster video titled How Tunneling Can Be a Survivor Skill Issue. And I wanted to talk about this topic because I actually have discussed this topic in the past, talking about how tunneling, getting tunneled I should say, can be a skill issue on the survivor's end, as I covered from a video from DeBrownie, which I'll link at the end of the video. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and get into JCGlitchmaster's perspective on how somebody could be tunneled, which he's actually displaying an example here from the Sable, who is actually running 2 anti-tunnel perks, which at this point, thankfully, off the record, has been nerfed. So now it leans a lot more into trying to hide from, from the killer, and really leans into the idea of off the record, which means that you're not being heard to the public. In a sort of journalistic perspective. Is that even a word? I have no idea. But decisive as well. Good point. So I am happy to see that Off the Record did receive a nerf, because it was a very overtuned for a very long time. So I'm glad that it is finally, it finally will serve the purpose that it's supposed to do. So that's really good. So obviously, if we're understanding that anti-tunnel perks are purely to be defensive and not offensive, as we've seen many a times that people have been using Decisive Strike in order to stun the killer deliberately for trying to, after getting in the killer's face, to get downed again, when that's not really what its intended purpose is. And obviously, Off the Record also being one of those perks that were also being used aggressively to aggressively body block for their teammates instead of actually just running away to get healed. So let's get into this part of the topic.
This individual is a P100 Sable, so they have a fair amount of hours in the game, enough to P100 a character. They're also running 2 anti-tunnel perks, so it's a problem that they get tunneled a lot. I would like to also know how much they complained about the removal of the anti-killing changes in the last.
Yeah, I have to say that when we see people that are sort of begging for these sort of anti-tunnel and slugging patches, we can understand that they clearly have a skill issue within the game. Now, the reason I say that, because it is a catch-all term that we usually end up hearing a lot of when we're talking about DBD, and I know it's like a running meme at this point. People just say skill issue regardless if it's actually a skill issue or not. But in this particular case, and in these examples, it is genuinely a skill issue on their end if they are experiencing this tunneling and slugging problems, because if you are deliberately getting tunneled, you're going to know, because they're going to specifically pursue you immediately after hook as much as possible. And that is the job of your team, to actually push the objective faster, because if they're only pressuring one person, the rest of the team can do whatever they need to do. So and obviously, if they're running the anti-tunnel perks and they're going and being aggressive, then that would make sense that they're going down immediately.
PCP. This will be handy later. We first meet this person when the game decided to invalidate a grab.
I've actually been scammed, lads. What is sick?
I've been scammed so hard. What was that? So, we've already been scammed out of there, and this little maneuver cost me a hot 40 seconds. Thanks, behavior.
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
We then managed to down them by catching them off guard with my tombstone piece that grants me undetectable when I hit tier 3.
So I will say that from the example given from JCGlitchmaster, we can see that the Sable already had really bad pathing, was not really utilizing any of the pallets that were nearby, or really making any moves in trying to actually survive in this situation, and therefore it really leads to the Sable getting down. Now, of course, within their frustration, of course, they never think that it's themselves that made a mistake, and then they immediately blame the killer for trying to tunnel, despite the fact that they decided to stay near the killer. And that's, I think, a big issue when encountering people that do claim that there's some form of tunneling going on, is the fact that they're not making any moves. In some cases, they're not really making any moves to not get in the killer's face. And I think that's one of the bigger issues. The second issue, obviously, is the fact that they're not actually good at escaping, in that sense. And looping is a very important aspect of Survivor, and there's plenty of resources that exist on YouTube and even on other platforms that cover DBD that talk about how to tunnel with, that talk about how to loop with killers. I mean, you know, there's a lot of resources out there on YouTube and other platforms that cover on how to loop and how to utilize like spacing and check spots and things like that. A good example is always Mr. Taterhead, who's always offering that sort of educational content in order to, you know, educate people so that they can, you know, have fun with the game and also be able to learn how to play more efficiently and stuff like that. And when I did play Survivor, I did follow those things, and it made it a lot more interesting to, you know, try to buy as much time for the team as I could. Even if they were not doing the gens, at least I was having fun being chased and being tunneled, and that to me was the most fun I would have with Survivor, because for me, I never enjoyed all the downtime of unhooking and healing and touching the gen all the time. I wanted to get into the chases and try to see how well I can perform.
Point, it's just cinema. The number of bad plays that you're doing is incredible. Every possible bad decision you could make, you've made. But don't worry guys, the killer's a big meanie for tunneling. So we hook them in the basement. Their basement is a bad place to be at the best of times. It's incredibly bad if you're playing against an insta-down killer like Michael Myers. To not waste any time, let's skip ahead to the unhook.
Where did she go? Oh, wait.
You actually, this is actual cinema.
And that right there is another example of bad placement. I've seen this a lot as well when it comes to the unhooking and healing immediately after being unhooked on a lot when I go against survivors in the past. And in a lot of cases, the way to counter that is to immediately go back to the hook, because, you know, I'm like, with the healing meta that we have nowadays, with the healing speed that we have nowadays, and especially if I'm playing a character like Ghostface, where he just lacks a lot of map traversal and a lot of ability to down, besides just them being one hit to down, you know, you kind of need to stay a little bit close. So I usually try to intercept and prevent heals under hooks, even though it's always good to be able to mark one of the two of them. It still is helpful to make sure that they're injured at least, so that they have to run off and heal somewhere else. But, you know, obviously healing is really not that slow anymore, so, you know, healing is super efficient. And you know, the more efficient things get, it gets a lot harder for the other side to kind of keep up, and that applies both ways. So in this instance, with survivors healing very quickly, a lot of efficiency is occurring then from healing, and then that is then applied to gens, so it makes the gens even faster. So yeah, it does make sense that they were able to pretty much get a quick heal in the basement. Now, it's still the basement, and you're going against an instant down killer like Myers, which really doesn't require like the spacing or you know, to, you know, hide themselves, I guess you could say, like Ghostface does. So you have a little bit more leeway when it comes to getting an instant down.
Can't make this up. This Sable against a tier 3 Myers decided to heal in the basement, so I was then able to see her running out of the basement.
I reckon I can get to here in time. Jump scare them.
This is yet another monumental fuck-up from, again, a P100 player. Now, it's important to note, this person was complaining about off-the-record being bad because they removed the endurance. My guy, if you used your off-the-record to run out of the basement like it's designed to do, instead of healing against a tier 3 Myers down there, you would have gotten off-the-record value. This situation has absolutely nothing to do with the...
And this right here is the biggest problem with the second chance perks that survivors have. It's that they have such a deep over reliance on this particular like perks that they feel like they should be invincible for making mistakes. And that to me is, I think, the biggest problem with the DBD balancing. And this applies also to killers as well. Don't get me wrong. I've also covered going perkless on killer, and I've seen plenty of my killer players, you know what I'm saying, I got a lot of respect for my killer enjoyers, but I had to call it out because the fear of going perkless is too crazy. And it, like, you're no better than players like this, right? Because at that point, because if they're sitting here saying, "Oh, I need to have endurance to even make it out of this situation," it's like, why did you put yourself in that situation? They have an over reliance on an overtuned perk, and it's more so on Survivor. Which I understand. Like the whole entire sort of side is playing essentially defense, but at the end of the day, it's an over reliance on an overtuned perk, as you can see, because it's no endurance, so I can't use it. It's like it's supposed to give you stealth. It's literally in the name off the record. It means you're not being heard by anybody, essentially. Like when something's off the record, it's not being heard publicly, right? That means it's not going to be published. So therefore, by definition, it should have always been this, where it's just you have stealth when you're unhooked, so that you can get away without them being able to immediately follow you. So if you pre-ran early and got healed somewhere else, there would have been no way for the Myers to know that you were there. Or they would have known, okay, they got saved, but they wouldn't have known which direction you would have gone to. And of course, like with Myers' ability to now mori people on second hook, you're just going to get one-shotted anyway. So the endurance wouldn't have made a single difference because you just would have been grabbed and choked out anyway. So either way, it becomes a skill issue on their end. That's just kind of how it works. So that's sort of my biggest issue. Obviously, we're going to focus on that. And I am a massive fan of the off-the-record change. I'm also a massive fan of the distortion perk as well, like when that got changed, because I think that leans towards what it's supposed to do. And the thing is with old distortion is that they would just use it to just rat around the map and not ever get found. And they made it the inverse, where it's like if you do well in chase, you rack up chase time, you can prevent aura reading, which is a good reward. It's like nice. If you play well, you get rewarded. That's nice. And in the same way is the philosophy with off the record now. I like the fact that it's like you want to, if you're having a lot of trouble getting like chase after being unhooked, if you have this active, you can just try to run and hide somewhere, and if they're far enough, and your pathing's good, you might not even be seen until like way later into the match, because you can run off somewhere, heal, and then continue to progress the objective. So off the record is a good perk for people who actually want to take the time out to use their little noggin. It's nice. I have to say, I like the design behind these perks. But if you want to watch the original video, it will be linked in the description. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section. Do you agree or disagree with the points being made in the video? Are you a fan of the off the record changes? Are you not a fan of the off the record changes? Why and why not? And if you want to support the channel, it'll be linked in the description that you can support. Consider becoming a member on YouTube or a member on Patreon for exclusive content and perks. And also, appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.